In The Only Study Guide You'll Ever Need, Jade Bowler explains that many students struggle in school due to the overwhelming pressure to get good grades while also managing extracurricular, familial, and social obligations. Overwhelmed students can develop issues that negatively impact their performance, like fear of failure, lack of motivation, and procrastination. However, Bowler argues that school doesn't have to be this way. If students learn how to effectively manage their mindset, study habits, and time, they can minimize their stress and live a balanced life while excelling in school. Bowler is a YouTuber and content creator commonly known by her handle UnJaded Jade, whose content focuses on study techniques and academic success. She began her YouTube channel in 2017 and helped to pioneer StudyTube, a YouTube genre that discusses how to improve your study techniques and productivity so you can excel in school. In 2019, Bowler co-founded the podcast The Wooden Spoon, which discusses what success looks like, especially in the real world after graduating from school. The Only Study Guide You'll Ever Need is her debut book, published in 2021 during her time studying at Minerva University. In this guide, we'll explain how to manage the many obligations in your life while excelling in school and maintaining a healthy mindset. First, we'll discuss how to adopt a growth mindset and make school interesting so you can avoid common pitfalls like fear of failure, poor motivation, and procrastination. Next, we'll explain the science behind how our brains learn and discuss the most effective study habits to boost learning. Finally, we'll discuss how to effectively schedule your time so you can get everything done, be prepared for exams, and still have free time. Throughout the guide, we'll supplement Bowler's advice with recommendations from productivity experts like Neil A. Fiore, The Now Habit, and David Allen, Getting Things Done. New section. Part 1. Manage your mindset. Bowler explains that to perform well in school, your first step is to prioritize having a healthy mindset. The health of your mindset is determined by how positively you think, feel, and act. A healthy mindset is crucial to academic success because unhealthy mindsets result in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that hinder success. In Bowler's experience, the most common symptom of a negative mindset is the fear of failure, which often leads to lack of motivation and procrastination. She explains that the fear of failure makes students either overwork themselves in the pursuit of perfection or avoid academic work altogether due to the anxiety it causes. Fear of failure often leads to a lack of motivation, students having no desire to study either because they're uninterested in or have given up on academic success. A lack of motivation usually stems from either a student's negative beliefs about their ability to succeed or from a genuine lack of interest in the academic material. A lack of motivation usually leads to procrastination when students ignore or delay their work. Procrastination and lack of motivation are the results of our fears. In The Now Habit, Neil A. Fiore agrees that adopting healthy thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, what Bowler calls a healthy mindset, is crucial to being successful. He also believes that the primary issues that hinder our success are procrastination, lack of motivation, and fears, like the fear of failure. However, while Bowler presents the fear of failure, including perfectionism, as the most common fear that causes procrastination and lack of motivation, Fiore argues that fear of success and fear of powerlessness are equally common causes of these problems. According to Fiore, people who fear success lack motivation and procrastinate because they think their success will isolate them from others. They may also believe that they won't be able to handle the life changes that success brings. People who fear powerlessness lack motivation and procrastinate because they think that adhering to external pressures like work will reduce their autonomy over their lives. Ultimately, according to Fiore, we should target all three of these problematic fears to overcome lack of motivation and procrastination and reach our full potential. Bowler makes a few recommendations to help students develop a healthy mindset, overcome fear of failure, boost motivation, and avoid procrastination. Recommendation number 1. Develop a growth mindset. Bowler explains that many students fall victim to a fear of failure, poor motivation, and procrastination because they have a fixed mindset. They believe that their current abilities and limitations are unchangeable. Students with a fixed mindset who struggle in school are the most likely to lack motivation and procrastinate. This is because they have the fixed mindset belief that nothing will improve their academic abilities, so there's no point in wasting time studying. Short form note. The concept of a fixed mindset was first developed by psychologist Carol S. Dweck and popularized by her book, Mindset. While Bowler specifically applies the effects of fixed mindsets to school, Dweck argues that having a fixed mindset can negatively impact numerous other areas of your life, including relationships, sports, and work. This is because individuals with fixed mindsets have a higher chance of developing issues like a sense of entitlement, a fear of failure and confrontation, and depression. Bowler argues that to overcome a fixed mindset, students should instead adopt a growth mindset, the belief that you can learn anything and overcome any obstacle through hard work. This will help students to understand that their time and effort will pay off. For example, if someone with a growth mindset has a difficult exam, they'll focus on their potential to ace it, even though it might take hard work. Instead of avoiding the work, they'll identify the areas they're struggling in and determine the best study techniques to improve their knowledge. We'll talk more about effective study techniques in Part 2 of this guide. This student is more likely to pass the exam due to their growth mindset. How to achieve a growth mindset. Carol S. Dweck agrees with Bowler that you should adopt a growth mindset by believing that you can achieve anything, identifying the steps necessary to grow, and taking action. However, Dweck elaborates that before putting your growth mindset into action, you should first take the following steps to address your fixed mindset too. Accept that you have a fixed mindset. This will help you acknowledge fixed beliefs when they crop up, combat them, and take a productive course of action. Identify your triggers. Understand which situations are likely to prompt your fixed beliefs so you can be prepared to combat them. Personify and name your fixed mindset. Seeing your fixed mindset as another person can help distance you from it when it crops up. Have a conversation with your fixed mindset. Talk this person out of their fixed beliefs. This will help you think more rationally. Recommendation number 2. Identify your end goals and make school interesting. Bowler explains that many students lack motivation and end up procrastinating or avoiding work because they don't see the value in academic work. To fix this, Bowler recommends that students identify their end goals, what they want to do after they graduate, and make school interesting by connecting topics they're learning about to these goals. Short form note. Psychologists explain that finding interest in schoolwork helps us perform better and curb bad habits because interest is both an affective and cognitive state. It impacts your mood and mind, respectively. The affective state makes us more energized and excited about learning in the long term. The cognitive state makes us more focused and increases our ability to learn because we process information more efficiently and employ more effective learning strategies. To identify your end goal, Bowler recommends focusing on your values and passions, not on making money. For example, imagine that your primary values in life are traveling and experiencing new things, and you're passionate about writing. In this case, your end goal might be to live nomadically and work as a journalist or online as a writer so you can live anywhere. This might not pay as much as a career in, say, finance, but it'll make you happy. Then you can relate school topics to this end goal. For example, maybe you want to go to a prestigious journalism university that requires a high overall GPA from its applicants. This might motivate you to work harder in subjects that you're not particularly interested in to keep your grades up. Or if you're not interested in higher education, consider how the topics you're learning about can be beneficial while traveling. For instance, learning about ocean tides might come in handy one day when you sail the Indian Ocean. How to identify passions, values, and goals that will truly inspire your schoolwork. While Bowler recommends identifying end goals to inspire your schoolwork by focusing on your values and passions rather than money, Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus suggest that doing this might be harder than it sounds. In minimalism, they explain that when we try to identify passions and values while caught in a daily grind like school and studying, we're often tied down by anchors that disrupt our ability to identify what's truly important to us. This can cause us to create goals based on things we mistakenly think we're passionate about, making us feel more lost and less motivated in the end. Like Bowler, they explain that a concern for money is one of the anchors you must let go of to accurately identify your passions. However, they identify multiple other influential anchors, like the fear of losing or changing your identity, concern over your social status, and fear of the unknown, uncertainty. Once you're able to let go of these anchors, you'll be able to identify passions that will truly inspire your goals and schoolwork in the long term. New section. Part 2. Study effectively and productively. Once you've adjusted your mindset and have a positive outlook on school and your ability to succeed, Bowler says that it's time to start studying. She elaborates that studying effectively means maximizing productivity, getting the most work done, or developing the deepest understanding of the material you can in as little time as possible. Short form note. In Deep Work, Cal Newport explains that the key to learning difficult things quickly and maximizing your output, in Bowler's context, studying productively, is to do deep work, focused, uninterrupted, undistracted work that pushes your cognitive abilities to their limit. To maximize the productivity of your study time, Bowler explains that you must first understand how your brain learns. Then you must adopt study techniques that work with your brain. Understand how your brain learns. Bowler explores 4 ideas that explain how your brain learns best. She uses the acronym SAAD to represent these ideas. Idea number 1. Engage repeatedly. First, your brain remembers information best by engaging with it repeatedly over time. This popular concept is called spaced repetition. Bowler explains that the more time that passes after you learn something, the more information you forget. The key to overcoming this is to review the information again right before you're about to forget it. Keep doing this each time you feel you're close to forgetting the material. Each time you review it, you'll be able to remember the information for longer, eventually fully ingraining it into your long-term memory. Short form note. Bowler argues that spaced repetition is the best way to memorize and retain information long-term, and numerous studies support her claim. Scientists began studying the effects of spacing material and tests on memory recall in 1939, and by 1989, a literature review emerged showing overwhelming evidence that spaced repetition boosts learning. Later studies from accredited universities and institutions show that spaced repetition is effective for learners of all ages and may work by causing significant electrical activity in the right frontal part of the brain. Idea number 2. Build connections. Second, your brain remembers new information better by connecting it to concepts it already knows. Bowler calls this association. For example, imagine you have to memorize the purpose of white blood cells to fight diseases in our body. It might be hard to remember this information alongside all the other information on an exam. However, if you're able to connect the purpose of white blood cells to the purpose of a concept you're already familiar with, like the mythological white knight who comes to someone's aid, it'll be easier to remember. Short form note. What if you're learning about a completely new, esoteric topic and can't think of an existing frame of reference to connect the information to? In A Mind for Numbers, Barbara Oakley suggests a few other ways to make information more memorable. You could move your body while reviewing the information, since we're more likely to remember things that involve movement. Or you could try to make the information humorous in some way, as we're more likely to remember things that make us laugh. Idea number 3. Engage deeply. Third, your brain remembers and understands information best when it's forced to engage deeply. Bowler refers to this technique as active recall. This is because deep engagement with information strengthens neural pathways in our brains that help us recall that information. Simply viewing study material isn't enough to strengthen these pathways. Instead, Bowler says we need to think hard about and apply information. For example, asking yourself to define a term and use it properly in a sentence is a more effective way to remember and understand it than simply reading the word and its definition repeatedly. Short form note. Experts agree with Bowler's point here and elaborate that one of the best ways to engage deeply with a concept and increase understanding is to teach or pretend to teach it to others. This psychological phenomenon, called the protégé effect, occurs because teaching information to another person boosts your metacognitive processes. You're required to test your own knowledge and use it to inform others, making you more aware of your level of understanding and which areas you might need to improve in. Idea number 4. Make it hard. Fourth, doing things that are hard will improve your ability and understanding the most. Bowler refers to this idea as desired difficulty. Bowler explains that our brains prefer doing things that we're good at or find easy over things that we struggle with. Doing easy things makes us feel like we're being productive, but the brain is just tricking us into avoiding the hard work that will actually improve our abilities. So instead of spending time on easy tasks, seek out material and techniques that cause you to work harder. This is how you'll actually increase your abilities. Short form note. In Peak, Anders Ericsson agrees that easy tasks don't do much to improve our abilities. Practice must be difficult and push you out of your comfort zone if it's going to help you improve. This is the fourth tenet of his purposeful practice framework, which explains how to make practice, like studying, the most productive. In addition to making the practice hard, he recommends having a specific goal for improvement, giving the practice your undivided attention, and seeking feedback from others. Use brain-approved study methods. Bowler discusses 4 main study methods based on the previous cognitive processes that will help you maximize your learning in as little time as possible. Method number 1. Flashcards. While flashcards are a popular method for studying, Bowler explains that they're ineffective if not created and used correctly. For flashcards to improve your understanding, they must incorporate your brain's preferred learning methods. First, flashcards should require deep engagement. There are a few ways you can do this. One of the easiest ways is to create cards with a question on one side and an answer on the other. Before flipping the card over, you must answer the question yourself. This will make studying with flashcards harder than simply flipping through your cards and rereading information. Another way to encourage deep engagement is to use as many symbols as possible on your cards in place of words and phrases. Using symbols rather than words requires you to recall more information than what's explicitly written on the card. For example, imagine you want to remember that the Rashidun Caliphate was the first caliphate and lasted the shortest amount of time. The Umayyad was second and lasted longer than the Rashidun, and the Abbasid was the last and lasted the longest. You could write Rashidun to Umayyad to Abbasid. Your flashcards should help you make connections with concepts you already know. Bowler explains that using images and symbols you're familiar with is a great way to do this. For example, to remember the order of 3 of the major medieval Islamic caliphates, the Rashidun, Umayyad, and Abbasid, you could draw a picture of a radish to remind you of Rashidun, a picture of your friend Maya to remind you of Umayyad, and the name of the band ABBA to remind you of Abbasid. Finally, the key to boosting learning with flashcards is to study them repeatedly over time. For example, if you have a quiz in 1 month's time, rather than waiting until the week before the exam and studying for 30 minutes every day, make your flashcards and start studying as soon as you find out about the exam. Flashcard techniques that boost learning. Experts echo Bowler's suggestions on how to create and use flashcards to boost your study productivity and learning. However, they emphasize a few additional techniques that make studying with flashcards even more effective and prevent outcomes that could negatively impact learning. By incorporating these ideas alongside Bowler's recommendations, not only will you boost your productivity, but you'll also ensure that you aren't accidentally sabotaging your learning. 1. Read the information on the card out loud. The more senses you involve in your flashcard practice, the deeper you'll engage with the material and the better you'll understand and retain it. 2. Shuffle your deck of cards regularly, especially if you're studying them repeatedly. This will prevent you from memorizing the order of the answers rather than the concepts on them. You'll avoid experiencing false productivity by making the task harder and increasing your level of engagement. 3. Quiz yourself backward when possible. For example, rather than routinely reading the question on the front of the card and then guessing the answer on the back, read the answer on the back first and try to guess the question on the front. This will make you think harder and engage deeper with the information. 4. Use apps like Canva or Flashcard Machine to add complex visuals and even audio to your card. This can be more effective for visual or auditory learners who would benefit from more complex sensory stimulation than simply drawing a basic drawing or symbol can provide. You can also use Canva's stock images function to find complex images that represent connections to ideas you already know. Method number 2. Memory testing. Bowler explains that testing your memory and understanding is extremely helpful when studying because recalling the information requires deep engagement. Testing also allows you to gauge what you know, what you don't know, and what you need to work on. She recommends 2 ways of testing your memory. The first method involves trying to condense a concept into its most crucial components from memory alone. Then compare what you've written to your full notes to see how well you understand the concept and identify anything that you forgot or misrepresented. This facilitates engagement and application. Bowler calls this technique summarization from memory. Short-form note. This method for memory testing is likely effective because it mimics and possibly expedites the second stage of your brain's learning process. In Make It Stick, the authors explain that during the first stage of learning, your brain encodes new information in your short-term memory. During the second stage, your brain transfers knowledge into long-term memory through consolidation. It revisits your encoded memories and fills in logic gaps, draws connections, and identifies crucial components. Bowler's recommendation to condense concepts into their most crucial components, review what you missed, and fill gaps in your memory helps and likely expedites consolidation by forcing you to actively go through it. Bowler's second testing method involves writing down every single thing you can remember about a concept. To do this, start by writing down a few words that will remind you of the concept. Then use those prompts to jog your memory and write down everything you can remember about the concept. Once you're done, compare your exercise to your notes and identify what you left out. These are likely the areas you need to work on. Bowler calls this method blurting. For example, if you have a Spanish exam on words used in the kitchen, you might write a few prompts to help jog your memory about the themes of the vocabulary. Los cubiertos, eating utensils, and comida, food. Then you can list out every vocabulary word you remember based on these themes. Tenedor, fork, cuchillo, knife, manzana, apple, naranja, orange, and so on. Compare your list to your notes to ensure each term is spelled and translated correctly, and make note of anything you forgot. Short-form note. Blurting has become such a popular method of studying that teachers have created blurting worksheets and templates. These papers are specifically designed to help students test their knowledge and then actively reflect on what they remember and what they need to spend more time revising. Method number 3. Create connections. Bowler recommends creating connections between new concepts that you're learning and your prior knowledge through storytelling. She presents 3 different ways you can do so. First, you can sort pieces of information into groups and connect each group in a logical narrative format. Bowler recommends this method because it connects the information you're learning in a way that makes sense to you, making it easier to recall. Bowler calls this method chunking, chaining, and telling a story. For example, if you're studying for your Spanish exam, you can sort the vocabulary words for food into one group, cooking utensils into another, and table utensils into another. Then, tell a story about making dinner and use each group as a part of the process. First, you gather the food, then you gather the cooking utensils, and once the meal is done, you eat with the table utensils. Second, you can connect elements of a concept you're learning to elements of a routine you perform regularly. This is especially helpful for processes you have to memorize or elements that have a particular order. Bowler calls this method Sherlock's Mind Palace. For example, you can connect each color of the rainbow to an action or object of your morning routine. First, you wake up underneath your red duvet. Next, you put on your orange slippers. Then, you go to the bathroom, which has yellow walls. In the bathroom, you pick up the green toothpaste tube and use your blue toothbrush. Finally, you put on your indigo robe and say good morning to your mother, who is named Violet. Third, you can connect elements of a concept to parts of a physical object. When you look at the object, it will help you remember the elements of the concept. For example, connect the 3 main stages of the hydraulic cycle to your water bottle. First is evaporation. You can connect this stage to the top part of your water bottle that's foggy because of evaporation. Next is condensation. You can connect this to the water droplets inside your bottle and imagine that they're the product of condensation, like raindrops. Finally, connect precipitation to the water sitting at the bottom of your bottle. Imagine this is the rainwater that has fallen and collected. Why chunking and ordering information improves our memory. In A Mind for Numbers, Barbara Oakley suggests that the underlying reason why turning information into a story aids memory is that it replicates the brain's system of storing information and transferring it from the working memory to long-term memory. All 3 of Bowler's recommendations, creating an original story to connect pieces of a concept, connecting parts of a concept to a routine, and connecting parts of a concept to an object, mimic this process. Oakley explains that when our brain first absorbs information, it stores it as a chunk in our working memory, where information is stored while we process it. Chunks are bits of information that are bound together by a common theme or meaning. For example, the food-related vocabulary words for your upcoming Spanish exam might form one chunk, and vocabulary about the rooms of the home might be another chunk. The more we build connections between the bits of information in these chunks, the stronger the neural pathways within the chunks get, the deeper the chunk gets ingrained into our long-term memory, and the easier it is to recall the information within it. When you actively break a chunk of information down into pieces and reconnect those pieces using a strongly connected narrative, routine, or object, as Bowler recommends, you're providing your brain with a tool that will expedite the process of strengthening the chunk. Not only will this help you recall this information more easily and intuitively, Oakley explains, but it will also free up space in your working memory. Your working memory can only contain a few chunks of information at a time, so once you transfer chunks to your long-term memory, you'll have more space to memorize and learn new concepts. Method number 4. Practice taking the exam. Finally, Bowler recommends completing past papers, real exam papers from previous years, or taking a practice exam on the subject you're studying for. These methods provide the experience of answering the types of questions on the real exam. Past papers are often available online or can be provided by your teacher or the exam board. If you don't have access to past papers, create your own practice exam. To do this, look at past essay prompts, homework assignments, textbook review sections, and any revision guidelines the teacher has provided, and pick a prompt that might mimic a real exam. For example, if your exam will ask you to write a 2-page essay about Macbeth in 60 minutes, choose a past essay prompt similar to a real exam question and practice writing the timed essay at home. If your exam is on the history of the Islamic Empire, create an exam out of the textbook review questions for the chapters you'll be quizzed on. Short form note. Using past papers and practice exams to prepare for real exams is one of the most popular and highly recommended study strategies out there. Numerous sites now offer detailed past papers, model answers, and revision notes. Using these pre-collected resources will save time you would have otherwise spent combing through the internet or old notes for study inspiration. Sites like Save My Exams are tailored to help you ace the exact exam and subject you're preparing for. American students preparing for nation-specific exams like the SAT or ACT can visit resources like Khan Academy for study guides and practice exams. Other nation-specific exam prep tools can also be found with a quick Google search. New section. Part 3. Make a schedule. In this final part of the guide, we'll discuss the importance of making a schedule. Bowler claims that scheduling will ensure you're making the best use of your time, helping you accomplish your schoolwork while maintaining free time for extracurricular and non-academic activities. Her scheduling method will help you identify your priorities, allot blocks of time to complete important tasks, and determine which study techniques will optimize your learning. Short form note. In Eat That Frog, Brian Tracy reiterates the importance of scheduling, citing the 10-90 rule as evidence. Spending 10% of your time on a task planning it, for instance by prioritizing it, scheduling it, and determining how you'll complete it, will reduce the time required to complete it by 90%. Bowler's method for making a schedule can be broken into 4 steps. Step number 1. List your obligations. Bowler explains that the first step when creating your schedule is to write down every obligation you must complete each month, like projects, exams, and so on, their deadlines, and all the tasks that are required to complete them. You should amend this list whenever you receive a new obligation or deadline. For example, your November list might look like this. November. Obligation. Science homework, November 2nd. Task. Complete 3 equations. Obligation. Swim meet, November 5th. Task. Leave the afternoon free, reschedule group study session. Obligation. History exam, November 30th. Tasks. Memorize each caliphate of the Islamic Empire and its time span. Learn the 5 most impactful caliphs and their major beliefs and accomplishments. The benefits of using a calendar to keep track of obligations. In Getting Things Done, David Allen recommends recording your monthly obligations using a calendar rather than a written list. A calendar format allows you to easily add new obligations without having to reconfigure your list every time something new crops up, making staying organized easier. Allen also recommends supplementing your calendar with a tickler system of strategic reminders of distant deadlines. For example, if it's currently November and you note in March's calendar page or task list that you have a summative exam on March 24th, you might not see the obligation again until March arrives and you look at your monthly overview. By then, it'll be too late to revise effectively. But if you place a tickler to remind you to start studying on January 15th, you'll be better prepared. Step number 2. Make plans. Once you've listed your obligations, deadlines, and tasks, Bowler suggests analyzing which study methods would best help you accomplish each task. These will be the plans you need to enact to complete the task effectively. For example, the plans, study techniques, for your history exam might include 1. Create flashcards, 1 hour. 2. Study flashcards, 30 minutes per session. 3. Create a story to remember when each caliph lived, his accomplishments, and his beliefs, 1 hour. 4. Perform a memory test about each caliph, 40 minutes per test. 5. Take a mock exam, 1 hour. Effective plans require detailed information. In Scrum, Jeff Sutherland explains that when listing the actions, plans that are necessary to accomplish a vision, your tasks that fulfill obligations, you should also record the resources needed, the effort required, and what the standard for completion is for each action. For example, you might note, make flashcards, requires library textbook rental, medium effort, 1 card per vocab term, 1 hour of time. These additional components will arguably help you accomplish the task more efficiently by ensuring you have the materials and time necessary to complete it in one go. Reflecting on these components will also improve your ability to effectively prioritize and schedule your plans, which we'll discuss in step number 3 and step number 4. For example, a high-effort plan might require a buffer of recovery time before you can start your next plan for the day. Step number 3. Prioritize your tasks and plans. Next, Bowler recommends prioritizing your tasks and plans based on 1. Your level of understanding of the topic, and 2. Each task or plan's deadline. To do this, devise symbols that indicate each task's priority level and write the correct symbol next to each task and plan. For example, you might write 3 exclamation points next to high priority items, 2 next to medium priority items, and 1 next to low priority items. How do you know which tasks to prioritize? Bowler notes that if your understanding of a task or plan's topic is lacking, the task or plan is important to focus on and will require a larger time commitment than something you already understand well. Therefore, these tasks and plans will be of higher priority. However, you must also take into account your deadlines. Tasks and plans with immediate deadlines, like homework that's due the next day, will usually have higher priority than plans that can be completed later in the month. However, tasks with impending deadlines might not always take the highest priority. For example, imagine that you have 2 upcoming obligations, 2 homework assignments due in 5 days, and a history exam next month on topics that you don't yet understand fully. While the homework is due sooner, you'll need a long time to fully master the exam content. To prioritize your plans for these obligations, determine what needs to get done first to both meet deadlines and improve your understanding in time to pass the exam. In this case, you should spend an hour creating flashcards for the exam first because you need as much time as possible to memorize them before the exam. Then, you should do the homework because it's the most immediate deadline after that. Bowler's interpretation of the common urgent important principle. Bowler's recommendation for prioritizing tasks closely aligns with a popular prioritization method that's dominated the self-help and productivity genre for the past few decades, the urgent important principle. This principle, popularized by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1954, argues that you should prioritize tasks by considering their urgency and importance. Urgent and important tasks should be prioritized first. Important but not urgent tasks should be prioritized second. Urgent but unimportant tasks should be prioritized third. Unimportant and not urgent tasks should be prioritized last and avoided if possible. This method has been recommended by numerous productivity experts, including Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins, and Brian Tracy. The urgent important principle follows the same general outline as Bowler's recommendation: to consider your level of understanding, importance, and the deadline, urgency, when prioritizing tasks. However, Bowler's method doesn't mention the possibility of avoiding tasks entirely if they're deemed unimportant and not urgent. This is likely because Bowler sees all tasks that appear on your list, school requirements, extracurriculars, and social events, as important and thus worth completing at some point. Step number 4. Schedule your tasks. Once you know the priority levels of your tasks, schedule a time to complete them. Bowler recommends scheduling tasks week by week for up to a month in advance. You should revisit your schedule at the beginning of each week to make a daily and hourly schedule. Bowler notes that you should consider spaced repetition when scheduling your study times. For example, study flashcards might be one task on your list, but scheduling and performing it only once won't improve your understanding of the material. Instead, use the spaced repetition technique by scheduling multiple flashcard sessions at regular intervals. Bowler's scheduling method versus David Allen's. Bowler and David Allen, Getting Things Done, Both recommend creating a clear schedule to boost your productivity, with Alan particularly emphasizing the importance of weekly scheduling. Following these tips from Alan's GTD method in addition to Bowler's suggestions will arguably help you schedule your week more effectively than simply following Bowler's framework alone, boosting your productivity. Set a specific day and time each week to make your weekly schedule. This will ensure you have sufficient time to complete the task and remember to do it. While making your weekly schedule, review all your future tasks and obligations to determine whether there are any you can unexpectedly get done in the upcoming week or make immediate progress on. Be sure to update your tasks and obligations, crossing off or deleting anything that's completed. Reassess the importance and urgency of tasks and plans to ensure you're using your time wisely. For instance, if you've scheduled a spaced repetition session for this week but still remember the information perfectly, delay or skip the session. Review your tasks and plan to determine whether there are any items you need to follow up on. For example, do you need to follow up with a teacher about sending you a past paper or with a team member about their part of a project?